I came to Florida in 1979, and
Hi, Howard.
Hi, how are you? I'm Howard Knepper. How you doing?
What's up, dude? I'm Blake. Nice to meet you.
I'm Howard Knepper. Nice
yeah,
to
I
meet
appreciate you sitting down with me today,
pleasure.
dude.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Before we get started, what I'd like to do is give kind of our viewers and our listeners a background of how we got to sit down today. So, as our viewers know, this has been a podcast for community members to come on and talk about things they're passionate about and tell their story. Once I realized there was a small platform building and it was election season, I realized I am very ignorant on all of the people who are running for office, people that could potentially better our world. And I realized I'm not alone in that. A lot of people wait to vote for president, and they forget that there are these other elections that are potentially more important. So I said, all right, let me see what I can do to get some potential politicians on. I found a list of everybody who's running for office in the state of Florida, and you were like number 2 on the list and the first person to answer my call, and I can't thank you enough for being immediately willing to come sit down and tell me what you're passionate about.
It's my pleasure. Can I call you? What would you like me to call you?
Blake.
Okay, Blake. Yeah, well, I'm glad that you did this because I think I'm going to be really informative for you because you're on the right track by even being interested and concerned about speaking with people running for political office.
Yes, sir.
And how they got there, and the importance of what you interviewing them.
Yes, sir.
For the community and the state and our government.
I think it's very important.
It's very important, and I think this is going to be very enlightening.
I love that.
You.
Well, before we dive all the way in, I usually like to start this with a simple, who are you and what do you do?
Okay, my name is Howard Knepper, and I am the president of Florida Mortgage Property Loans, Inc. I got my mortgage license in 1979. I was very young then. I was 18 years old, and I've had a career in Florida as a licensed mortgage broker and owned my own company for 40 years. I have closed over 10,000 mortgage closings. I'm an expert in hard equity lending in that financial field. I'm also a licensed Community Association Florida licensed manager and own global condominium and property management. I happen to have, as an entrepreneur, one of the top takeout Italian restaurant sub and pasta shops in my own building up in western North Carolina outside of Asheville, but my main home is in Miami Beach.
Okay. My wife and I love Asheville. I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina for 15 years.
There you go.
We love to go visit. We have a condo, just like an efficiency in Lake Lure.
I know it well.
Yeah, near Rumbling Bald. We go to the Rumbling Bald Resort, and we love to go tour the Biltmore, and Asheville's just an awesome, awesome place.
I'm about 15 minutes from the Biltmore House. I have a building with a takeout restaurant, a small motel. I live in Waynesville and Maggie Valley as well as Miami Beach. You'll come with your wife, and you'll be my guest for a great Italian dinner at my takeout.
We would love that.
One of the top takeouts on the East Coast right now, so
That's
I'm real proud of that.
How'd you end up in North Carolina from Miami?
Well, in the 1960s, my father was in the shoe manufacturing when he had a big part of a shoe manufacturing company that was nestled in the mountains. And they founded that company because they were the originators of that company were driven out through the Holocaust in the 1940s, and they wanted to find a place similar to Europe and the Switzerland Mountains. And Waynesville and Maggie Valley and Asheville had that appearance, and that's how they wound up building the factory in the Western Carolina area. And my father was a big party to that shoe manufacturing plant, and that's how I wound up learning about Maggie Valley, Asheville, and Waynesville, North Carolina.
Interesting. The Carolinas are just beautiful, man. We plan on raising a family in Charlotte or right there in the Carolinas. My sister just got property in near that area there. It's just beautiful, man.
It's really nice.
It's really hot down here. It's getting more and more overpopulated, but also thank God we were here during these last 2 years. Up to this point, you don't really think it's that important about who the governor is or who the politicians in your area are. You don't really think about it. You just go on with life as usual until something catastrophic happens.
Yeah.
And you realize why it's important to have, like, quote unquote states' rights. And, some people handled it terribly. Mm-hmm. Businesses were decimated across the country. And other people, handled it well. And I'm very thankful for our governor and keeping us open and allowing us, my wife and I owned a gym before this business. We opened a boutique fitness facility in North Palm Beach. Mm-hmm. We were at our 1-year anniversary, March 2020. 4 days later, forced government shut down for COVID, and COVID just decimated that business. So instead of going back to corporate America, thank God our state was open to operate in a few months. We closed that business and pivoted and built this business. And, you know, I like to say that we're proof that the American dream is real, and we're glad that we're doing it in the state of Florida.
I'm happy for you.
Thank you, dude. Thank you. So I know you ran for president.
That was something that wasn't really. Let's say it like this: I wasn't really running for the presidency.
Okay.
There was someone asked me to give to what would I say if I were running on a broadcast, and and I really didn't really want it to be out there, and it was, and I couldn't take it down. Talk about scrubbing something, so it was something I did for somebody, and I wish I wouldn't have done it, but
Understood.
I don't think I said anything that was wrong, actually.
No, but I read a news article that seemed like they wanted to attack you.
I remember that article. I think it was in the New Times.
It seemed odd because it seemed like you were advocating for like animal health and rights,
right.
but they were mocking the sentiment of that.
Yeah.
It was very strange.
Well, it is funny. First of all, I remember that that article where he said that he reached out to me, and he didn't reach out to me, because if he would have, I would have never, I would have definitely countered it. There was nothing there that made any sense that he said that made any sense. In other words, I was advocating for the chimpanzees to be freed, and in fact, the Congress did take it up, and they actually did free them, that they were being tortured. So obviously Congress thought it was important, and then after that, the lions that were killed in Africa, that became a major law that you can't bring over a trophy head. And then he complimented me a little bit on a few things, but then he went after me on the Cuba issue.
Right. What was the Cuba thoughts?
The Cuba thoughts there was that my whole life, when I came here about 38 years ago, I met a very good friend of mine from Cuba, and I was able to live her tragedies of having a family in Cuba and never seeing them. She wasn't one of the Pan Am children, but I was able to live the pain that these people really live through what Castro had done. And I made it really a lifetime effort to want to see that regime fallen.
Yeah.
I was able to really feel in my heart what they have gone through, being sent over here, a mother sending over a child at 14, struggling with no parents, no family. It's an incredible struggle. So I made it really a very passionate that I would want that regime changed, which I won't get into it now, but my opponent, Mr. Rubio, has done nothing to really bring that regime down. I'm not going to lead in the questioning, but if we ever get to any of those, I'll elaborate on anything. But that's what happened. I just said that I felt like our military should take it down. And by the way, that he made it look like that I was an overzealous warmonger. But the fact of the matter is, our government, even Mr. Rubio, has stated recently, which I don't agree with half of what he says, but he did say one thing I do agree with. And he believes that the Russians, he said it, not me, a year ago, that the Russians could wind up on the island of Cuba again, or an adversary could wind up sitting over there and becoming a problem for us. Once that happens, it's a problem. So, he made those statements, and I agree that it is a national security threat having this close to our shores, especially since the Russians went over there to Venezuela. So that is a serious issue
I agree.
to be concerned about, and why he attacked me in that article didn't make any sense. They attack, but they think I was being a warmonger. I wasn't.
Right.
I still say today the seriousness of the Cuban regime remaining, and we have our adversaries all over the world, and that's very close to us, and the
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
and I've heard it said about what's happening in Ukraine right now, a comparison, not to advocate by any means what Putin is doing, right? But a comparison would be, what if China or Russia were to go into Mexico or Cuba and start setting up military operations? What would we do?
Well, the problem is that the Taiwan subject now.
Right.
We have said through many of our presidents that an attack on Taiwan would be an attack on the United States. Let me say right here and now, if I were, let me preface something so we can get, so you and your audience can understand something. And it's good that you reached out. Understand, for me to become a U.S. senator, I need $40 million in campaign money. Now, I've always been self-funded with with less than $500,000. So, and people say, well, why is it you need $40 million to become a U.S. senator, unseat a sitting senator like Marco Rubio? Well, first of all, we have a long state. So it is impossible for any candidate to drive up the state of Florida. We have 67 counties. So you need television money. I have to sit in Miami and be broadcast all across the state. Now, Murphy tried to unseat him, and he got about 40% of the vote. So therefore, they say, well, why is it that expensive? Well, you're talking about $10,000, $12,000 a minute on television commercial prime time. So for Howard Knepper to be known through the 67 counties, I would need almost $40 million in campaign money, or I would need to go viral in some way where major television would be able to pick me up and I wouldn't have to spend a penny, like Donald Trump was able to, as a celebrity, get out there. So in my case, I believe there's no question that I would be a much better senator than Marco Rubio, hands down. But again, he's got that seat and he's got that microphone, and what comes out of his mouth is incredibly ridiculous. So that's the problem. Most of your politicians do not get the opportunity to get known across the state. In the case of a federal office. Now, remember, I'm U.S. Senate. Now, if you're running for local Congress, you still you have a better chance because you're in your local area.
Right.
Okay. I chose that I don't want to do that. I was going to go run for U.S. Congress, but I've turned 60 years old, and I really prefer to, I just prefer to go after the U.S. Senate.
Is that
seat.
where you think you could enact the most amount of change?
I really do. I
Right.
really do. I really believe that. We have a lot of problems in every area. From drugs coming into this state, the drug traffickers. We're losing literally thousands and thousands of young people, old people, to heroin and fentanyl every single day. Major abuse.
My brother overdosed in 2016 from fentanyl.
I'm really sorry to hear that. My niece, who happens to be one of my nieces, okay, is in her late 20s, and she is a heroin addict, a fentanyl addict. She's been through 7 rehabs, and she just keeps coming out. In my own building, I witnessed an 18-year-old young girl overdose on heroin right by a swimming pool. So I've seen these cases over and over, and there's not enough being done to fight the war on drugs. And all of these things lead me into other areas. For instance, again, I don't want to lead.
Well, I don't want to. While we're on this topic, I'd love to bring this up because right now we're sitting in a kava bar. Are you familiar with kava or kratom tea?
No.
Okay, so the tea that I'm drinking here, Kratom. Some pronounce it kratom, some say kratom, some say kratom. It's a leaf from Southeast Asia that we brew into a tea, strain, add some lemon juice and some simple syrup, and it hits your serotonin, dopamine, and some people don't like to say this, but opioid receptors. This is a natural pain reliever, anxiety reliever, and some people use it as a way to get off of opioids. Okay, so my brother overdosed in 2016. Mind you, my brother was 10 years in the Army, 2 terms in Baghdad, Bronze Star recipient. Army diagnosed him with narcolepsy and gave him liquid GHB, jugs of it, to go to sleep, and Adderall to stay awake. So now my brother, who's damaged from war, is now hooked on these drugs. Short story, very long. After 2 years of being sober, he had a weak moment, and he got some dope, and it had fentanyl in it, and it killed him. I didn't know what kratom was at that point in time. Neither did he. If he would have known that there was a tea that could have scratched whatever itch he was trying to scratch, that had 0 chance for overdose, 0 chance for respiratory depression, which those cause, right? I believe he'd still be alive. But in 2016, the FDA full-blown assault on kratom and wanted to schedule it as a class 1 drug. There was so much public pushback that it actually was stopped. The FDA pushed to ban it. And then recently, within the past year, the FDA, DEA, and the World Health Organization have been pushing for an international ban on a leaf that literally saves lives. So I like to share that information with you.
Sure.
It's impacting our community in a positive way. The kava kratom industry in South Florida is booming, and it's helping people, and there are alternatives to these drugs that come into our country, and the war on drugs, to me, has been an absolute failure.
Right.
So I hate to go on a tangent there, but when we talk about fentanyl and overdosing and whatnot, there's things that can help people, natural things that can help people.
Well, absolutely, and I'll support anything like this because, it doesn't surprise me that the government would go after something that could be positive to help somebody when they have failed miserably since Ronald Reagan to do anything. We don't have a war on drugs. We have a complete open door for the Mexicans, the Colombians, South America, to pour in here all the drugs flowing across the border, killing our people left and right. We have no war on drugs. Our government has failed us miserably to the point of no return. And where is my opponent, Marco Rubio? Where is he having town meetings? We have 67 counties. He doesn't care. He doesn't have one. Where is he screaming on the Senate floor that we need literally hundreds of billions across this country to fight the drug overdoses? We have to have more rehabs. We have to have more prisons. We have to have tougher sentences. We have to step forward and save our humanity. We have to save our people. And the people are dying from drugs. We're doing nothing. There is no war on drugs. It's ridiculous. And again, where's my opponent? Doing nothing about it. It's really terrible. You lost a great relative. I'm going to lose my niece possibly.
Hopefully not.
I have time.
We'll
Hopefully not. I have lots of friends that are losing families that are torn up. So a senator has to go to around the 67 counties and have town hall meetings. Have a lot of discussions like this. He has to get on the Senate floor and fight. And in the case of Mr. Rubio, he either doesn't care, or he's preoccupied with something else, or he has lost the ability to rally members of Congress or Senate to anything he wants to do. Okay, he gives sound bites, and it's not enough. The people need another senator in that seat. Unless I get out there with some major coverage, he's going to wind up in that seat again, and we're just going to keep having the same problems that are affecting us in a serious way. And there's many besides just the drug problem.
Do you think that people who are passionate like yourself, who do get an opportunity to make it into office, then face the entrenchment of what Trump called the swamp and start realizing that what they're passionate about is going to be the most impossible uphill climb, and then in order to progress their personal growth, they bend on, because it seems like we're made promises all the time, and then when people get into office, and obviously I'm not talking about you, right? I'm talking about our current president, and with wiping out student loans and legalizing marijuana, as soon as he gets into office, that's out the building, out the window. Do you think that there's so many entrenched people in top levels of politics?
Well, I did a whole piece on that, and I'll tell you exactly what happened. Nora O'Donnell is a news anchor. Nora O'Donnell. I believe I've got her name right. And CBS, I believe it was CBS. If not, I'll get you the information. They did a very, very big story on the fact that when you run for U.S. Senate or Congress, the minute that you get to Washington — I'm from Baltimore. I was born in Philadelphia. I know Washington, D.C. well. There's a thing called K Street. They send they're called a junior senator. So once you become a U.S. senator or U.S. congressman, you're sent down to a boiler room. And what they do, Mitch McConnell, if it's Republican, and the Democratic leader says, listen, they call him in the office. They're like, we don't care whatever you told everybody to get where you are. You're going to go down to a boiler room, and you're going to start raising money for other people to be reelected. And if you don't do it, we're not going to back you. Now, if you do it, you're going to win a cruise, you're going to win a car. But if you don't do it, we're not going to back you. Then the U.S. junior senator congressman says, well, I'm that's not me. I'm honest. I got here because I promised everybody back in my district I was going to do this and that. They said, we don't care what you promised them. You go to the boiler room. You go there for 2 years. You keep your mouth shut. You promise. You just go and raise money for the party, and then maybe we're going to help you choose. So that's exactly what happens. It tried to get exposed. I even said it was illegal that they said, now here's the story. President Nixon passed a law that you cannot raise money from your federal seat, okay? So what they do to get around it is that's why they sent him down the street to the boiler room, because President Nixon had a law passed when he was president that you can't from your federal office raise money for the party. So how they get around it is they send them down the street to raise the money. It's pathetic. They should be what you just said. They ran on something. They should be on that floor, and they should be talking about the issues that they ran on and making a change.
Yeah.
And I'll slip something in because we may not get back to it. There was something, and you probably heard it, and your audience might have heard about term limits, okay? And there was something I was involved in called Term Limits America, because we believe that there's really never going to be a fix of this problem until you have term limits. President can run twice, 4 years, 4 years. Your Congress and your Senate can run over and over and over. Half of your Senate, half of your Congress, probably in there 40 years. Now, the argument is, well, that's good because they get experience. That's absurdity. That's absurdity. They're in there for 40 years. They're out of touch. It'd be like look at America, where we say we have 300 million people. If we were a corporation and we were the shareholders and they were the directors, we would have them directing Walmart. We wouldn't have them in there. They're running our country into the ground. So we need term limits. The only way that's ever going to happen, though, is that the American people would have to really, really understand the importance to get rid of the senators after 12 or after, let's say, 12 years or say 18, Congress out in 18, fresh new people coming in, and they simply have to get out. You know, they're in there 30, 40 years, and I know your audience, most of them are going to agree with me. We've got to have term limits for both Congress and Senate. I'm not saying like the president every 4 years and then 4 years later, every 8 years. I'm saying that maybe 12 or 18. And if we do ever enact it, remember, they have to pass it. So now that how it's going to have to happen is the American people are going to have million-man marches in Washington demanding an end to this incredible club. The Senate is 100 senators. It's a club. It's a tightening club. And that's why you have Ukraine, but maybe we'll get into that later. But I believe strongly that term limits are absolutely imperative to get this country on the right track. And you know, I don't want to make fun of some of them. I'm not going to start bringing up senators' names right now. If I'm asked, I'm not shy. I'll be happy to do it. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is some of them should not even be allowed to sit in that seat.
Yeah, I mean, in some states, would they be allowed to drive a car?
No, they wouldn't. In fact, the South Carolina Senator, Strom Thurmond, he couldn't. Look at the Supreme Court. The last one that we lost a couple members couldn't have a driver's license, you know. So whether we get into that issue of whether they should have a term limit, you know, I don't know. But lifetime service and they can't have a driver's license is another issue. But let's try to get Congress and Senate on the term limit situation.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I think a lot of people are starting to see the importance of having term limits. You know, there's a happy medium, I think, though, because the fact that the president, every person who takes this job is new at it, and they only get 4 years to figure it out. When they finally start figuring it out, they could be voted out. I think it is good that we have some people who have some experience, right? But it can get away from us, and this is where you get in these terms like shadow governments and whatnot, like who's really running the country. Like, you know, Biden, if Biden was your grandfather, you would say, you know, we're going to see Joe, Grandpa Joe, and he's kind of losing it. You know, we got to be patient with him. But we have him running our country, and it's not really him, right? It's all of the people who have been there for a long time. So obviously, you know, I think 12 years might be short, but something like 18 years makes a lot of sense. You allow somebody to get a career out of it, understand what they're doing, and then you would hope there would be like a, you know, legitimate onboarding process so that people who come on board are familiar with what's happening. I think it's very important, and we have people who are so old pulling the strings in this country. Like you said, they're out of touch.
Well, if you would have had term limits, Joe Biden would not be the president.
Right.
You would not, nobody in their right mind in the Senate or Congress in their right mind would have ever put him in. Every single Democrat in the Congress and Senate that backed Joe Biden to be the president of the United States should be thrown out of office, every one of them. I hope anybody out there that's in any of those states or anybody that voted for a Democrat that supported Joe Biden, which is probably all of them, those politicians should be out. And if they don't understand that, just look at the two major disasters he did. He did in Afghanistan, was absolutely unbelievable what he did there. And what he's done here Well, again, I don't know what subject matter you want to get into.
No problem. Listen, don't. If you're passionate about it, I don't want to mess up a strain of thought.
The most important.
Remember, we want to go viral.
No, I understand. Well, we have to keep it. We got to keep it. We can't go X-rated here.
Yes,
can
sir. Yeah. Oh, well. First of all, don't censor yourself. Do whatever you feel like you need to do.
Well, I could say something that would shock you and your audience, and I don't think you would put it on.
Oh, no, we don't edit this.
Yeah, but this is pretty bad. What I would say.
Well, I encourage
it's really
you to
disgusting.
Say it. I encourage you to say it.
It has to do with this. It's pretty bad.
Well, listen, we're open.
Well, let me tell you something. It's unbecoming of a future senator to say such a thing.
I can respect that.
Okay. Well, let me say this. First of all, the war criminal is Joe Biden. He is fully responsible for every death that's occurring right now over there, period. He had every opportunity as the president of the United States to do a no-fly zone. All of this thing that he's hiding behind, that we don't want to get in a war and we don't want to get in, it's absurdity. There's no way 100% that Russia would have launched any nuclear weapons if we would have had a no-fly zone. What he has done is made the world unsafe, the American people unsafe. He's a threat to our national security. He should be taken for treason. What he has done by having a no-fly. If I were on the Senate floor right now, none of the other senators on that floor right now would say he is a coward. He should be having a no-fly zone immediately tonight, a no-fly zone no matter what. By doing that, not only are you going to save millions and millions of people flowing out into Poland and everywhere else, you're also going to make America safer, the world safer, Europe safer. It's unfortunate that he didn't do it already about 20-some days ago. He would have saved millions and millions of people being displaced, disrupting Europe, disrupting the American people. I'm going to refrain from what I would say, although I'll bleep it myself. If Putin told Biden to suck his dick, he would do it. And I swear to God, if I were on the Senate floor, I'm so furious. This senator would stand there and say, if Putin asked Biden to suck his dick, he would do it. Because Joe Biden is just that weak and that disgusting. Joe Biden is the worst president in history. He's responsible for every single death that's happening in Europe right now. And the fact that no other senator has the guts, including the two Florida senators, Rubio and Scott both, should stand up. Now Rick Scott has talked a little bit about this, that it's serious to do more. But more is not sending over weapons. It's called a no-fly zone. Joe Biden doesn't have the balls to do it yesterday. He doesn't have the balls to do it today. He doesn't have the balls to ever do it. If I ever saw him, if I ever became in office, I would look at him and say, you are responsible for the deaths of these people. This is a dangerous time. I want you to remember, your audience should remember this. Back when 3 million Jews were killed in Germany, they went to Roosevelt and said, look, President, there's 3 million people that have died. What are we going to do about this? He said, well, we're not going to do anything about it. We're not going to enter this war now. We can't enter this war. We can't enter until there were about another 3 or 4 million people killed. This is so surreal. This is so unbelievable that in the middle of Europe, the United States of America, which your audience should understand, there's no match towards the United States. There's no way Russia would be stupid enough to launch.
It would be a suicide
mission.
Mission.
So the fact is the no-fly zone was necessary. Joe Biden has interest in Russia, but he goes back to being a crook back when he was a Delaware senator. I'm not going to go into his history because I've been following him for when he was a senator. He was all about the money. He was all about, why every major bank is in Delaware incorporated that have MasterCards? Because they could charge the maximum interest rates, because Joe Biden made sure that the maximum interest rates on the American people and credit cards could exist. Every single time that got fought, Joe Biden made sure that they could continue because they donated to his campaign. Joe Biden, as much as he was just a self-centered, financial person that wanted to make money, the fact that today he is, and I always said the American people would eventually pick a president that could cause a problem because they don't pay attention to what you brought up earlier in the conversation. The importance of paying attention to who you're voting for from every single aspect, going even lower than Congress. You know, you have to look at politicians as they're growing forward, listen to them. But when they get up there into Senate and Congress, you have to be careful you're voting for. But we're back to the term limits again. Look what the Democrats have done. They put this man in office, and they can look at it and say, what is the big deal? You better believe it's a big deal.
Huge
Women
deal.
and children are being murdered every day. You know, I only wish that the media would show more graphic coverage. You know, when we lost our 17 wonderful people over in Parkland, which again, that's another subject that I was compassionate about. Why doesn't anybody hear from me? Because again, we're the 40 million, or I need major coverage or something to go viral to get out to the people of Florida. I have said before that if you're going to protect the U.S. Capitol and an airport, you better protect your schools the same way. I did a commercial with a rifle as soon as the 17 were killed in Parkland. But if people could see those images of those children at Sandy Hook or in Parkland, bloodied, down on their backs with blood all over the place, I don't want to be graphic, but I want to make it clear to your audience that this is something that you don't see. But if you saw the 17 children that the police saw and the teachers saw and the law enforcement of these children, they weren't just laying there on the floor. They were laying there with gunshots, blood flowing out of their mouths. And then the Broward County school board official says, well, we just need to get some more locks on the door. You have to have scanners. You have to have more help for for mental health. No question about it. But the scanners are important. If you're gonna have them at an airport and you're gonna have them at the U.S. Capitol, you need them in elementary schools and high schools.
Not only that, but what about all the veterans out of work? Wouldn't these people make great people to guard our children?
Blake, it's a great idea. Blake, that's a brilliant idea. Yes, they could, and they should. No, teachers should never have to defend themselves with a weapon.
Right.
That can be dangerous for the students to be around those guns, and et cetera. What the U.S. federal government has to put the money up to have scanners, just like they do in an airport. I don't care how much money it costs. We have to protect our children. Now, remember one thing. I want to say something, then I'll stay quiet, let you continue with your questions. You know, I don't have any problem with our foreign aid around the world. I get it. America's great. The American people are wonderful people. We're the greatest country on earth. We have the greatest military power in the world. There's no match to our military, our men and women around the world. We have the strongest, most powerful nuclear weapons and submarines. Some things I won't talk about because I know some. I spoke to. I was on the stage with a very great congressman, Hastings, before he died. He told me a lot of things, but believe me, there was no match to our military anywhere in the world. But what was I saying before that? I lost my thought for a second.
We were talking about protecting schools,
yes,
and having scanners and the military.
Oh yeah, no, go back. That's foreign aid. So I have no problem with foreign aid. But if you cut back half of our foreign aid, you could give everybody an education for free in this country, get rid of all the student debt, give everybody a chance to have a home. You'd have rehabs for drug people to go every single where drug addicts to go, the most sophisticated, unbelievable drug rehabs all across America. You would be able to pay for that 100%. Nobody would have a problem with health insurance. We don't need Obamacare. Everybody would have the best health care. The American people are always left not in second place, in 20th place. I have no problem. But cut the foreign aid by 50% and help the American people. The U.S. Congress and the Senate look at this, and they don't care. They say, well, we don't really care about my niece that may die or your relative, let him rest in peace. They don't care. So that's why we're back to term limits. Get them out. How can you be a senator or a congressman and sit there and be voting for hundreds of billions of dollars to go abroad to other countries,
for gender studies,
and for nothing for the American people? There should be no starvation here, no animal abuse. I'm a big animal activist.
Yes, sir.
No abuse. Student debt canceled. Hundreds of more prisons to put people and drug dealers out. A war against drugs, big time. Hundreds of billions of dollars to fight our borders, to not allow the drug kingpins to come in. With my opponent, Marco Rubio, I doesn't understand what a drug trafficker is. I would like him to come to my office in Miami. I open him to come to my invitation to him to come to my office so I can show him the pictures and the drug traffickers, the world narco traffickers that eyeball Florida, that are dumping fentanyl, heroin, meth, crystal meth, straight shot, a full investigation of the DEA, and we have to clean all of this up. And we have to clean up the prison system, too. That's another problem. But where is the Congress talking about this? Where's my opponent, Marco Rubio, doing anything to help with any of this? The environment, drugs, prisons, rehab, nothing. And we'll get into another subject that's really important about the Champlain Towers that happened about 10 minutes from my house. But maybe we can touch on that a little bit.
I think there's a conspiracy theory behind that. Have you heard the conspiracy theory about the McAfee guy? John McAfee, who made the internet security stuff, and he said he has all this information against the deep state. He says, I am not suicidal, and if I do end up dead, then I have a dead man switch that will release everything I know about the deep state, right? And then 3 days later, he's dead. And they've said that there's his apartment was in one of those buildings there, and then the buildings came down. This is total tinfoil hat stuff. Yeah. But what were you going to mention about the buildings?
The issue is that, excuse me.
You're good, bud.
I happen to be an expert in this subject because I happen to be, first of all, I am a licensed, in order to run buildings like Champlain Towers, have a license called a community association management license. Have that license. I have that license. I still have that license, and I also own Global Condominium Property Management that has a good license, and I'm the president and 100% shareholder. I've also was a president of a condo for 22 years, and in my 10,000 mortgage closings, I've dealt with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of nasty condominium associations like the one at Champlain Towers. Now, I spoke a couple days after that fell with Catherine Rundle, who if anybody ever wants to question her, if her office denies it, I don't think she would do that. I happen to respect Catherine Rundle, but I disagree with her 100%. I disagree with how she is handling Champlain Towers, and I'll tell you why. But let's talk about a couple days after collapse, I was invited to do an interview with her and Don Horn, the assistant state attorney, and their office. It was a private conference, which I was invited, which if anybody ever wants to question it, I have it in black and white to show anybody. I'm an open book. Make a long story short, they wanted to hear a couple days after Champlain collapsed what my thoughts were on what could be done to prevent it in the future. Okay, and what I tried to explain to them, and nobody seems to listen, and the whole thing's been swept under the rug, but I'm not going to let it sweep under the rug because I'm about to do a TV commercial about it. The grand jury got to hear what Catherine Rundle wanted them to hear, okay? And what the problem is that no criminal investigation into the board of directors is what happened. Every single worldwide engineer said what I said was, why aren't you going after the board of directors? There was enough information to see that the board of directors could have got the people out of the building. It's just that simple.
Wasn't there like a plumber, pool maintenance guy who was reporting that it was collapsing downstairs?
Absolutely. There was so much. This is such gross negligence. I believe from what I saw, it meets criminal negligence. Now, I happen to have more information because I know that the condominium boards across Florida in all 67 counties are horrendous. The state of Florida, now I happen to support probably 80% of Ron DeSantis. Okay, I'm a Republican, but I cross the aisle. I don't care if it's a Democrat issue and I believe in that issue. I'm going across the line immediately. I support Ron DeSantis. I think that he has nobody's perfect, but I think he's been a great governor, and he also had some qualities of possible presidency, the way he thinks. Okay, certainly better than Joe Biden.
Yeah.
But going back to what happened there, the board of directors, the state of Florida took some of the money from a fund that all condominiums pay into. And that fund is for handling complaints and all kinds of issues. Well, they took money from that fund. They shouldn't have done it. But let's forget about that for a second. The board of directors should have a full criminal investigation into why they allowed that building to remain occupied. There was enough information to show that it would be gross negligence to allow anybody. Now, worse than that, they kept putting people in to rent. A lot of people that died there were approving more rentals. How in the world can you let young people and children and old people elderly people move into a building you know is dangerous. It's unbelievable. Now, what I wanted Catherine Rundle to do, and I'm going to be saying it on television soon, that she should have she should reopen up a full criminal investigation to the board of directors, all of them. I'm talking about for the last 10, 12, 15 years. Find out what happened, especially because they had a right. And understand this. Do you know that when they turned over the association, the board of directors turned over the association to the court. Okay? In other words, when you can't handle it, a board of directors can't handle an association or a corporation, you turn it over to the court for a receivership. Okay? That's an option they had. That was before anybody died. They turned it over after almost 50 people had been killed. That's when the law firm convinced them to turn over the association to the court and they still didn't want to do it. They still didn't want to do it. It's outrageous, and the full investigation should be done and re-given to the grand jury again. So I believe that if it's gross negligence, criminal negligence, then the grand jury should indict every board of director that had anything to do with gross negligence. Let's understand
this would be to prevent something like this from happening in the future, because if if potential future board members of any condominium see that you're going to go to prison for gross negligence,
correct,
you'll make sure to cross your T's and dot your I's.
Right, and that's right. And if anybody out there, any of the family members that lost someone heard me and you talking about this, they would be all over us to get this out there, because they should not be let out. If you're a president of an association, you have to be held responsible. If you've got arguments going back and forth, and if anybody's listening, because we like to do something to help people, and anything I do, if anybody can hear my words and it helps save lives, that's what's important. If you're a president of an association and you know that something's dangerous, look, either get out or turn it over to the court. You are the powerful person as the president. If you've got a board that's jeopardizing people's lives, that it's like Champlin, get your attorney to file with the court, okay, to turn over the association to the court to get a receiver. Receiver is going to cost some money, but it's going to save lives. And in the end, the receiver has a lot more power to get things done than a regular board. A receiver can pick up the phone and say, Judge, I need this right away. And he's got immediately within an hour. There's no waiting. So I call for a full investigation of board of directors to help with Blake. What you said, it's been on my mind that other associations, 30% of people that live in Florida live in a condo. There are many condos that are dangerous as we're speaking. They swept it under the rug. My opponent, Marco Rubio, stood there right when it was collapsing and after it collapsed and did nothing. He doesn't understand the situation. Doesn't understand condominium law. He doesn't understand the importance of what I'm saying. That board, anybody, and one last time I want to reiterate it, if a grand jury comes back, they should go to jail, prison for what they did. You can't be a pilot of a plane, and if you can't handle it, get out. You don't get on the plane and just fly because you think you might fly. Right. Get out.
And then the NTSB would be all over you if there was
correct.
Yeah.
So that's a major issue right now that we can't let sweep under the rug. We've got to come back. We've got to take a step back now. And Catherine Rundle, the attorney, the Miami attorney, state attorney, needs to reopen this thing in a criminal investigation. If she doesn't, I don't think she really cares at this point, because she's going to probably retiring soon, but she's going to have me as a thorn on television on her with this case. She's got to do it. And then we'll get into other things about my opponent who doesn't understand the problems of banking. Remember, my expert is banking, mortgages, 40 years. That's a whole nother problem that's happening in this state that he doesn't address any of that either. You know, I keep saying to myself, what is Marco Rubio getting paid $150,000 a year to do year after year after year, when we have people dying in our state from drug overdoses? We don't have any rehabs. We have drugs flowing in here. We have environmental disasters all over the place. We have so many problems in this state, and he's doing nothing but give some sound bites. When are the people going to wake up in this state? You know, and say, wait a minute, we agree. We got to get rid of this guy.
I think people don't know. People don't know that there is a better way, that there's more things that can be being done. And I think, unfortunately, it has a lot to do with, like, you know, the media conglomerates that disseminate the information. You know, it's like none of this information is put in front of anybody. You know, a great example of that is when you're talking about Ukraine, all the news reports say that the Ukrainians are just decimating the Russians, right? The Ukraine is winning, and it just seemed like to me, I'm like, this is an odd narrative that we're hearing, and it's probably because it's to back this sentiment that we don't need to go in and help. A no-fly zone. Biden said it himself. He's like, well, that would leave us shooting at Russians, and then that is going to trigger a nuclear war. Well, isn't allowing somebody like Putin, who's like a bully, to do whatever he wants, and doesn't that signal to other regimes around the world that we're not going to stand up to them if we're afraid of a potential, nuclear war? I think anybody who launches a nuke knows it's a suicide mission.
Well, you're absolutely right, but more than that, not only does it give a signal to China to go after Taiwan. Okay, and we know what Biden would do in that case. Absolutely nothing. Okay, so that's going to happen next, possibly. But it also shows the Russian people when we don't go and do an I-fly zone. That also gives a signal to the Russian people that it's okay what your president's doing. For the United States, the greatest military power in the world, forget about NATO for a minute. NATO's important, but the United States is the one that always has to step up with the power and the money and everything else. The fact that we do not do a no-fly zone shows the Russian people. Now, if you want to get rid of Putin, then you do the no-fly zone, and then when the Russian people realize that we are we're going to war with Russia, that's when they'll turn against Putin. What we have done is said to the Russian people, you've got a great president. We think he's good enough because we're not going to go in with a no-fly zone.
Yeah, maybe he'll just take Ukraine. Well, I think some people are pushing Ukraine to take a deal. Yeah. He just wants Ukraine, but where does it stop? Does he just want Ukraine?
Yeah, no. The problem, yeah, that's true. But the problem is forget about he probably would not go further anytime in our lifetime. It could maybe in 20 years. My concern is you've got a blackout going on right now. The public does not see the horrendous killings that are happening right now. If Joe Biden, I'm going to say it, he has got to, forgive me for and I'm not saying it again, the disgusting thing I said, but I'm saying that Joe Biden is absolutely a war criminal for what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. He knows by not doing the no-fly zone. I call him a war criminal because that's what he is. He's allowing it. He has the power to do a no-fly zone. He doesn't have the guts. He doesn't have the brains, and he's disgusting. For every blood that's on that ground in Ukraine is Joe Biden's fault. The American people want a no-fly zone. They understand a no-fly zone. We're a tough country. Now, imagine if we had the no-fly zone. Now, if we do it now, that would be okay. Should have been done 20 days ago. We would have saved millions of people from fleeing into Poland. We would have saved us from paying all this aggravation we're causing ourselves now at $5 a gallon. But we also, if we do it now, we'll have a safer America, a safer world. We'll show Russia you're not going to push us around with a threat of nuclear weapons. You're not going to do it. And he needs to do it now. But where's the senators? Where are they standing up on the floor screaming like I'm doing right here and now? Hopefully this broadcast, you can get it to somebody that will understand that this U.S. senator, this future U.S. senator, would be calling and screaming for Joe Biden to get out of office or do the right thing and have a no-fly zone immediately, and shoot down the Russian planes and go in and do what we have to do. So, nobody likes war. But if there's ever going to be a time that we have to step forward, it's right now in the middle of Europe, in the middle of the most unbelievable situation in all of history. And by the way, if we don't do that now, the next time he goes in, it will be somewhere worse. We have to do it now, or there's a problem, a major problem. Henry Kissinger said it a long time ago. You got to contain something like this immediately, because if you don't, what's going to happen, and I want your audience to understand this because it's very serious. Henry Kissinger, who was Secretary of State for President Nixon, he was one of the greatest Secretary of States. He really was. He wasn't perfect. But he said that people need to understand this. The reason why you would have to do a no-fly zone now is not because we're worried about Russia firing into us or Iran firing into somebody or North Korea. It's that if we don't contain something right away, okay, they'll fire in. For instance, North Korea could fire into South Korea, and then once you have 600,000-700,000 people killed, Henry Kissinger said it, and he's right, that we then have to enter. It's not about will we want to enter. We would have to enter. we would have to enter because we can't sit back and watch 700,000 or 800,000 people get killed. So in the case of this, we have to do a no-fly zone immediately. But the problem is Joe Biden is spineless, a coward. When he looks himself in the face, I don't know what he's looking at. There's nothing. If he were sitting in front of me right now, I would look at him and say, you have blood on your hands. For every single death in Ukraine is blood on your hands. For every American that dies in the future, blood on your hands. For every single person that dies because of Russia's aggression, anywhere in the world, it's because blood is on your hands. The president of Ukraine tried to explain to him, if you're going to be a leader of the free world, then act like one. But he's not. I don't believe he's capable of it. If I looked him in the eye and said, Mr. Biden, I'm Howard Knepper running for U.S. Senate. You don't have the guts to be our president. You don't have the guts to do anything that a world leader would do. And you know what I wish he would do? Prove me wrong. Do a no-fly zone immediately. Get your balls in your hand and be the president that you're supposed to be and the world leader. God help the United States of America if we don't get this no-fly zone and do it now. And will we see, if we don't, will we go on? Okay, yes, we will survive, but that's not what America's about. That's not what we're about. We're not supposed to let an aggression in the middle of Europe, and then we have to go to bed every night when this even if they do a peace. By the way, if we don't do it now, they're going to do a peace agreement. Okay, and that's what's coming next. I predict it, by the way. They're going to do a peace agreement.
Would that just trigger 20-year guerrilla warfare from all the Ukrainians who don't want to be Russian controlled?
I don't think that's what could happen. I think that if we don't do a no-fly zone, they're going to do a peace agreement that the Russians he's going to find a way out, okay, Putin. And then it's going to be a peace agreement, and he's not going to control Ukraine. He's going to find a way out and a compromise. But that's bad for us because he's already done something that but he's got away with doing something without us
pushing the goalpost.
No, without us doing the no-fly zone.
Right.
What I'm saying is we've got to show him we're not afraid of the nuclear threat. If they do in a week from now a peace agreement and it works out for the two countries, it didn't work out for us. Because he then says, well, look what I got away with. I killed hundreds of thousands of people. I got out with my face still intact. I'm still the leader of Russia to come back in some other country. Millions of people were displaced, and I got away with it. We have to do a no-fly zone to show the world and to show him that we're not going to be afraid of a nuclear threat. And that's why it's imperative that it be done.
Understood. I appreciate your passion about the subject. While we're talking about foreign policy, how do you feel about the outsourcing of American manufacturing and the importing of cheap Chinese goods, destroying the middle class of this country?
Listen, I'm a USA guy. I believe in made in the good old USA. There's no better worker than the people of the United States. The American people know how to build something. Look what we built in history, going back to the 1800s. We invented electricity. We invented the railroads, everything. The whole point is that, we have to have a free society. But no, I don't like it. I want to do more for the American manufacturing. We need to do more to bring it back here. That's one thing that I think that President Biden is trying to do. On that regard, I think he should do more. I think he understands what you just said. Do you think that he's doing more? Well, kind of. I trash him in foreign policy. He gets an F. You understand?
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean that he's totally bad. Okay. He's not doing enough. He needs to do a lot more to offer incentives to have people stay here and build here and bring and in our own country to give incentives to have American manufacturing here, not just tax breaks, a lot of things, and bringing more people from around the world to come to America where it's safe, promote that it's safe, democracy. Now's the time to do it. You don't want to be anywhere around Europe and have threats.
Yeah.
America's the place to come. So yeah, I do agree that we're stuck in a stigma of cheap Chinese goods. But, we're always going to probably have that. But we certainly have to do something about China in many situations.
China's another scary topic.
They're a very dangerous country.
Yeah.
very dangerous country. We have to see what he's going to do now as far as standing up against the Russian aggression. The president of China, he needs to do that. But
I saw something that he said that the fate of Ukraine is the fate of Taiwan.
Well, yeah, I mean,
you had mentioned that earlier.
I think he's going to attack Taiwan. The American U.S. government's policy for 50 years is an attack on Taiwan, is an attack on the United States. But what Joe Biden has shown is that he's not going to do anything, and I think China could make that move. But China is definitely an aggressive. First of all, we can't get too much drama here, but with China. But China has violated the human rights and lied to us for 50 years. They have the worst human rights record. We always said we wouldn't deal with China under those conditions, but they're aggressive when it comes to their military. They have a right to have a military, but we have to be careful. And it's just that China is, I think one of the problems is the human rights records.
Yeah,
it's pretty bad.
Agreed.
It's a bad human rights record. So we don't want to isolate them completely. We certainly have to just continue to work with China as best we can. But if they go after Taiwan, then that would be a major, for me, if I were a U.S. Senator, that would be a major problem for me to support. I would hit him with hard sanctions. But I would do more than that. I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm not a guy that likes to do what they're doing now about let's just, send a bunch of, armory to Ukraine, which we should do that, by the way. It's better than nothing. But if China, if we knew that China were going to go into Taiwan, I would be absolutely voting for a no-fly zone and mean it. I don't want to sit there and talk about sanctions in a case like this. I want to talk about shooting Chinese aircraft down if they cross into Taiwan. Why do we have the greatest military on earth? Why? For nothing? We thought it was a deterrent. Obviously, that didn't work because our great deterrent didn't stop Russia from going into Ukraine.
Not at all.
They were testing. They were testing us. They waited long enough. And then when Joe Biden says we already made his mind up to do it, remember he said that on TV 10 times? It's unbelievable.
Well, is that about the one thing he said about the gas prices? They're going to go up. Yeah. It's not my fault. It's Russia's fault.
Yeah. A real politician is one that really does have a heart. And, and when you look at the vice president laughing when she's over in Poland, there's nothing laughing about people dying and screaming for their lives and being displaced. Where her laugh comes from is beyond belief as far as I'm concerned. I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. It shows me that she has no heart. She doesn't really care a damn about anybody getting slaughtered over in Ukraine. Because how can you be talking about that in Poland and laughing, knowing that literally 2 miles away, people are crossing a border? It doesn't make any sense to me, both of them. It really is disgusting. It really, truly is. I know that Democrats are saying, "Oh, he's a Republican." Listen, I cross the aisle for all issues. I'm bipartisan. But if you want to look, if you care about people and you care about human beings, if there was ever a time for us to use our mighty might of the strength of the most powerful military in the world, the United States military, the greatest Navy in the world, the greatest Air Force in the world, the greatest fighting force, is right now with a no-fly zone, and make it clear. And if the planes come across, shoot them down. And in China's case, if they go after Taiwan, no-fly zone, shoot them down. Okay, enough with this sanction. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not a warmonger, but I'm just telling you the way it ought to be. And I know I'm right.
Sometimes you have to fight force with force.
Unfortunately, you do, and luckily we spend $50 billion a month, roughly. That wasn't 50 million, Blake. We spend 50 billion
a month.
A month, 50 billion. It covers, payroll, and it covers all the most sophisticated.
And that's
aircraft.
not what's black budget. That's
right.
Yeah,
that's a lot of money, and we have the might. But to sit in Europe and let this go on tonight as we're speaking, and this is an opportunity now to show the world that we're not afraid to go against someone with nuclear weapons. If for anything the no-fly zone should be done to show Russia and China and our adversaries around the world that we mean business. What we look now is it's so dangerous what he has done, this cowardless foreign policy president. I don't know what other words to call it. I'm not going to use the justification of old, senile. It's a coward that allows that says you're the free leader of the free world. He wouldn't even send the planes in, which that would be better than nothing. But it's our aircraft that should be there, not somebody else's.
Right.
The United States of America that says there's a no-fly zone starting at 10 a.m. in the morning, that he's notified Russia, and if any plane crosses into the Ukraine airspace, it will be shot down by American Air Force. Period. And if Russia will challenge us, then we will go to war with Russia. I'm willing to do it. I didn't say we have to shoot nuclear weapons, but I'm not going to allow. You can't allow this man to now make a peace agreement with Ukraine and get out without us showing him that we were not afraid. We got to do it.
You've mentioned a few times about crossing the aisle and being bipartisan, which I think is so important. And in this day and age, the parties have been so split. We are so polarized in this country. And there have been some people who have tried to create a third party in the center. A gentleman by Weinberg. Is it Weinberg? Eric Brett Weinstein. He started this movement called Unity 2020 on Twitter, and it was the potential third party closer to the center, because it seems like if you're at any watering hole in this country, most humans, most American people want very similar things. You know, we want safety, we want opportunity, we want health and wellness. Most people are pretty either just a little left or just a little bit right of center. But when he created this Unity 2020, Twitter immediately banned it. Facebook immediately banned it. They were worried that it would take too much attention off of getting Trump out, this anyone but Trump thing. How do you feel about big tech censoring discourse amongst the American people for potential changes in our government?
I really think they need to stay out of it. You know, if it's going to be something that's really a situation where somebody is going to hurt somebody by, you know, maybe exploding a bomb somewhere, and our big tech has information of that, and they turn it to the courts, they bring in the FBI, that might be a case. But big tech needs to stay out of it. It's and they're getting drawn in by these congressional hearings all the time. I saw them today that they're asking for promises. The Congress and Senate are asking, will they keep coming back? These three presidents of Google and Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, and Google. And no, they shouldn't be. They should stay out of it and not get so involved. They shouldn't be involved. But the Congress wants to drag them in. Yeah. And it shouldn't be the case.
Well, social media has become the new town square.
Yeah.
It has become the place where we discuss ideas amongst each other, especially in a day and age where we're told to not gather in groups with more than 10 people and to stay 6 feet away from others. They've pushed all of our communication onto these social media platforms. Yeah. So I think to then censor discourse could be tragic, you know?
It is tragic, and they shouldn't do it. So, you know, we have to hope that they won't do it and they all come to their senses. But then you've got the big stick that they're holding over their head. You know, Congress has a way, our government, of saying, well, if you don't do it our way, we're going to fine you and this, that, and the other. So it's a thin line, and but I agree with you. They should stay out of it and not get involved in it. Absolutely.
You know, Howard, I think you and I could go back and forth about the madness that's going on in this world. I would like to ask you one crazy question, and then we can touch on anything that you may think we've overlooked. There's been a lot of talk over the past couple years about potential UFO sightings off of military bases. There's a Commander David Fravor, who says his account of chasing this tic-tac-shaped thing. Have you heard any of these conversations?
I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard anything about it lately. I know over the years there are people that you know, are really interested in UFOs, and you know, I find I don't see any. Well, if you're leading to, do I have any issues as far as funding for it, or?
Well, my question is do you think these are not potentially UFOs, but super high highly classified pieces of equipment that another country or the United States has maybe developed?
It's possible. It's possible, but I am absolutely not against pursuing, funding and any individual private people or our government to pursue anything that looks like it's an unidentified aircraft or what have you. I think there is some life form out there. I mean, we would be ridiculous to think, in my opinion, it's just absurdity to think that there's something not out there. I mean, I think it's so far out there that we may never on Earth be ever to ever see it or get a hold of it. Okay, and it's beyond our mindset. I call it the supreme being. I believe in God, and I believe in it, and I say supreme being God. And I don't think that we're supposed to understand it. If you look out into space, where does it ever end? It never really ends. So for anybody to believe that there is not life on some other universe somewhere so far away, I just don't think would make sense. To believe that we're just here on Earth.
Right.
I mean, it's just absurdity. So anything that I don't think it's probably a good chance that there has been something from another foreign universe that maybe has wandered in our atmosphere, and there's been enough sightings.
Yeah.
Whether the government knows it, I don't know why they wouldn't reveal it. There's always like this secret thing. They made a joke about it that the presidents have known about and don't want it. Why wouldn't the American people tell us if they knew something? So I don't know why. So I do believe that it's possibility that if it hasn't already happened, it could happen. So anybody out there that's chasing you unidentified flying objects, I don't think you're wasting your time. I think that you may nail one and then bring it to our attention because, we're a very small speck in the whole space and the universe, and if they came by us with the troubles we have here, they're probably running away from us as quick as possible. But you could get a glimpse of them. It's very possible.
Well, I appreciate you entertaining such a crazy question, but it's a topic, and people like to hear potential leaders in our country talking about these types of things.
Yes,
before we wrap up, is there any other things that you think we haven't touched on that you would want people who are excited to vote for you for U.S. Senate to know about you or what your platform is?
Well, I think the most important thing is for as our national security, to show the world that we're not afraid to stand up in a situation like Ukraine. It's important that they, for our national security, because we don't want people to have 9/11s coming in here. We want to show, it's not that we could be attacked necessarily by nuclear weapons, but we want to show the world that we're a tough country and don't mess with us. And that means a no-fly zone. So I want our national security is important. Now, in Florida, we have got to do more when it comes to a crime, our law enforcement. I'm in Miami. I have police coming to me all the time saying to me, what in the world's going on here? We need help. We have to stop the drugs. These are police officers that come to me and say, we need help, Howard. We need more money for law enforcement. We need to be able to stop the drugs coming in. They're asking us to let people out on their own recognizance. We need help. So we have to do more about law enforcement. We have to be a law enforcement state. We have to make sure that we have rehabs all over the state of Florida for people that are overdosing. We have to have a complete blockage of drugs coming in to this state. We have to tell the warlords and the drug traffickers, you're not coming to this state. If you do, we're going to get you. You're going to get the death penalty. Now, I know people said, Howard, you better not say that. Your neighbor might be a drug trafficker. If my neighbor's a drug trafficker, I'll tell him right now, don't come to this state. You're going to get the death penalty. The death penalty, and I've said before, it's so serious that I'm not necessarily, I don't like an eye for an eye, okay? And I'm not going to stay here today and say for sure that I would vote for that. But I'm saying that we may entertain that on the highest level drug dealers, if you're dealing heroin and you're willing to give heroin to somebody in fentanyl, and you know that they're going to possibly die, you know that they could be overdosed, then you are acting in a murderous role, and you may wind up in the death penalty. Now, if you don't like the fact that I said that you're going to get the death penalty by dealing heroin and fentanyl, then I suggest, sir, that you get another line of work. Get out of drug dealing. Maybe you should go deal some marijuana. okay, which I'm not for advocate for that either, but that I'm not going to worry about marijuana. Okay, I tried it a few times myself, like Clinton. I didn't inhale.
I
Okay,
see.
but the point that I'm getting at is this: if you're a high-level drug dealer, and if I'm in the U.S. Senate, I'm going to not only advocate for hundreds of billions of dollars to stop the drugs from coming into Florida, to make a war, an all-out war assault against the drugs coming into this state, fentanyl, heroin, and methamphetamine, the bad drugs. I'm going to fight very hard for that funding for this state and other states as well, but this state's the one I'm concerned about. We're going to have rehabs built all over the state of Florida. You're not going to have to pay to get help. To get help. I'm going to ask to cut back on some foreign funding, okay, so we can pay for that, and we need more prisons. We can't keep letting people. The police come to me and say, "Why, Howard? You got to get in the Senate. You got to get voted in." I said, "Get me $40 million. I'll get voted." The issue is that we need more prisons. We can't let people out because we're saying, well, this drug dealer and these low drug dealers, because we don't have any space. That's absurdity. We have to get the money to build the prisons, the rehabs, and to fight. We have the technology to stop all of these drugs coming into Florida. I can't worry about the rest of the state. Okay, I'd be a senator in the state of Florida. Okay, so I got to worry about the state. We can stop the drugs coming into Florida, the heroin, the fentanyl, the methamphetamine. We can have long drug sentences. We can have the death penalty for high-level traffickers. And if that, let a few of them get executed, and then they'll stop. And we have to stop it. We really do. We can't continue with this. It's hundreds of thousands of people dying in our state, running up health insurance costs, running up crime. We have to do more for people to be education. We have to have money to get more people educated, and also cancer. We have cancer that's people that need health insurance getting better health insurance. They shouldn't have to pay so much money for it. We're the greatest nation in the world. We have to cut back on foreign aid. I'd be screaming in Washington for that. And no, I would not be one going to Washington being sent down to K Street in a boiler room. Okay, believe me. I would be on the Senate floor, but you have to get along with other senators. You have to get along with congressmen. That's how you get bills done. Marco Rubio blew it for himself a long time ago when he was on that presidential stage and he criticized Donald Trump. And by the way, one more point I'd like to make on Marco Rubio. Cuba, he has never been able to overthrow the Cuban regime. Here we are, a guy in Miami, right? When Donald Trump was the president and Donald Trump kept asking Marco Rubio, what are we doing about Cuba? Marco Rubio said nothing. He never did anything. The first 2 terms, he did nothing to overthrow. Now, the last time that the Cuban people took the streets, right, he then acts as, oh, wow, this is really good. Now let's do something. He knew that Joe Biden wasn't going to do anything. Why didn't he just say, look, I made a mistake? He never did anything. When Donald Trump was a Republican president was the time. And if Marco Rubio believed that it was a national security threat, that he said it, not me, he said it. But by the Cuban regime remaining there, they one day could let somebody come on the island, or spies, etc. He said it. Then if it was that important, why didn't he, when Donald Trump was president, get rid of the regime? It's not that hard to get rid of that regime. And it has, forget the fact that it plundered, people 50, 60 years. People have lost their homes, their families. It's one of the worst things that have ever happened to a small people that lost everything.
Something I learned is about all of the Cuban Americans in South Florida who are Republican because they've come from communism, and they would never want to see that in our country.
Right. And they're not fighting for it. I'm the only one. I've been more of a big mouth about U.S. military enforcing it. This was a chance to do it. Look, we can do it. We can change that regime and get rid of it, okay? And what we're doing now is just letting the people continue to suffer there, and it doesn't make sense. It's 90 miles, but that's not the argument. If Marco Rubio was smart, and he'll never debate me, if there's anything, anyway, Blake, you can get this out here to let this guy, remember, there is hope because the Georgia, Raphael Warnock is his name, he unseated the wealthiest member of Congress on the last election in Georgia, Kelly Loeffler. She was appointed by the governor to be a senator after one retired. He beat her. Okay, he was a reverend. He beat her a couple of years ago. There's still hope for me to take down Marco Rubio, but he would never debate me. In order for him to debate me, there has to be a poll through the voters of Florida. that show that I'm up to about like a 7 or 8% poll rating. It's very difficult unless I got across the 67 counties with major network. Maybe you can help in that regard. But if there was enough noise out there, if I could debate him, believe me, I would say to him, what did you do? If you really, where was your argument to Congress that it was a national security threat to come in and take down the regime? Right? He had the opportunity to do it, but he couldn't do it because Biden was the president, right? Biden's not going to go in. But I do agree with Marco Rubio in this sense that we do have a possibility of Cuba being a national security threat if they allow somebody to go on that island. Whether it be Venezuela, whether it be Russia planes, whether it be China, I don't know. All I know is to have a Cuban having a regime, communist regime, 90 miles off our coast is dangerous. And do you know, Blake, that that the Cubans in Miami are not allowed to launch an attack from Miami into Cuba? Because it's unbelievable. Yeah. Right? It's unbelievable.
Let me ask you this, if you don't mind, because
sure.
I'm running out of time, and I want to know, because kratom and natural substitutes for pharmaceuticals are very important to me in our community.
I love it.
Would you be, willing to protect the rights of Americans to use natural remedies to subsidize pharmaceuticals in the form of kratom or different types of teas? If something helps somebody get off drugs, would you protect it so that it wouldn't be scheduled as a drug?
I would absolutely protect it. I would like to say to you that I want it to be safe.
Yes, sir.
Okay, if anything were to be discovered that it had to be labeled, use at your own risk. Okay, I'd like that to see labeled that way until it would be passed at some point in time. But as long as it's labeled, right, that it's not been necessarily approved by the DA, and there's many things that are good to eat and take in your body that the government has not approved. That, by the way, people could be saving their lives.
And vice versa.
Right.
There's lots of things that have been approved that are very dangerous.
Correct. So I absolutely would support it. I'd like to, before I leave today, take a glass of it.
Yes, sir.
And I absolutely would protect it. I'd like to see be labeled that it wasn't necessarily approved at this time by the DEA. But no, I would protect it. If it helps people and it's not going to kill them, absolutely. If it helps somebody stay off of drugs, their health, absolutely, I'm an advocate for anything to help anybody, and especially that. So, yes, you have my support on that.
Thank you very much,
sure,
Howard.
Absolutely.
I can't thank you enough for this conversation,
invite me back.
I will.
Invite me back.
Well, that was what I was going to say next, is that I'd like to have you back on in a couple months.
I'd love it.
We're going to cut this up into clips of some of your most passionate moments.
Free
and we're going to put it on social media.
Get it to some major network. Right now, if somebody could hear that this senator would be screaming that Joe Biden literally is a coward. He has blood all over his hands if he does not immediately do a no-fly zone, and it will show the world that we're not going to allow any aggressor to get away with it, and it will show Putin in the future he can't do it. And if we don't do it, it's majorly important to show Putin that we did do the no-fly zone, because all he's going to do is get out of this with a peace deal, and he's going to be in the future somebody else where he could do it again. So Joe Biden would have me screaming, he is a coward. Blood on his hands if he doesn't do the no-fly zone. He's squarely responsible for every single death that occurs right now in Ukraine, because the leader of the free world, leader of the most powerful military in the world, has the power to do the no-fly zone. And yes, if we have to go to war with Russia because of this, then let's get it on and get it over with, so Russia never thinks again, or any superpower in the future, that the United States is going to be intimidated because they have nuclear. It will not happen. So that's my take on that. So hopefully maybe you can get this out there. And I'd love to come back, Blake.
We'll have you.
I've enjoyed this very much.
Thank you.
Likewise. I really have. Yeah.
If people want to follow you and what you have going on and support you, is there a social media network? Is there an Instagram? Is there a website?
They have my HK, my email, okay? And the website is just about finished very shortly. But right now they can contact me with the phone number 305-34.
Yeah, go ahead.
305-342-2845, 342-2845, and it's H. Knepper. My last name is Knepper, but for my email, it's HKNEEPER at AOL. And again, they can get a hold of you, Blake. You know how to get a hold of me. You know, maybe you could sometime in the future arrange a town hall meeting.
Yeah.
And you could host it. I would love to join it.
Okay.
And be there with that. That would really be a help for the community. To be able to have a town hall meeting for guys like me that are not a sitting senator at this time, but believe that they could do a better job and let the community come out there. And then if you get a major network involved, and then you never know, it could be a national major network, then we would really be helping your passionate things too.
Yeah.
As well as mine.
Well, I think we've seen that this country needs things to be shooken up a bit, and we need people who are passionate and knowledgeable to stand up to do that. So we appreciate it's a brave position you're putting yourself into. Not a lot of people would be willing to do the work and put their neck on the line. So we appreciate you stepping up.
Thank you very much, Blake.
Howard Knepper, this has been a pleasure.
Thank you, Blake.
Thank you so much. You guys, thanks for being a fly on the wall during this conversation. Make sure you check in with Howard, and most importantly, we'll see you next time live from Hakuna. Thanks, y'all.
Tell you something. That was good.